I will let the panel descend. I will make space here because they need to do something in this part of the scene. And with that, one innovative thing that we have for the conference today is that there's no break between panel 1 and panel 2. We know everybody hates it, but you have no choice. You have to bear with us because coffee is not there till after the second panel. So just stay in the room. And it's a good panel that we are looking into because, again, we thought maybe what we could do is move us away a little bit from the European Union dimension only, from everything that we have been talking about with Common Agriculture Policy, Green Deal and other things, and take a bit more global perspective. But before we do that, I would like, you heard it already, you heard actually quite a lot about the EU mission on soil. That mission was launched and is running and operating. And one thing that you can do, in addition to everything else that you can do during that conference, is you can sign the Soil Mission Manifesto. I'll tell you more later again this afternoon, hopefully, how many people have signed. And you will see some people signing it live during that conference, but that comes tomorrow. But if you haven't done it yet, please do so. You can do it online, but there's also a stand in the corridor where you will be able to do it physically with your physical signature. And we think it's an important symbol of all of us recognizing that just like without agriculture going right, nothing else can go right. Without soil working, agriculture cannot work either. So that's a reminder, and I'll be coming back to that slide every now and then throughout the conference. Now, for this second panel, as I said, I'd like us to maybe take a bit of step further away from EU-centered only, but EU-centered also, because we will be talking about sustainable development goals and we'll be asking ourselves, but also asking you, whether we are on track for 2030 when it comes to sustainable development goals. And believe it or not, but literally 5 days ago, Eurostat came up with the report where they take stock where the EU is in terms of delivering on SDGs. And as you can see from the slide, it's a brand new report. You can find it. You can read detailed analysis of what's really happening there. But as you can see from the slides, we are sort of there with 3. We are definitely not there with 3, including, interestingly, climate action, and everything else in between is sort of in between. And I find it very timely that we have actually that overview of the situation when it comes to the EU. But sustainable development goals, on the whole, all of them are extremely important when it comes to our overall well-being, and they're extremely important when it comes to agriculture and farming and forestry. And farming and forestry and agriculture are extremely important for sustainable development goals. And the world on the whole is not really doing so well when it comes to SDGs, but you might have noted that Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, said that science is our great ally to deliver on the goals. And this is exactly what this second panel is to be about. But in order to kickstart second panel, I'm very happy to invite to stage Ismaël El-Ouafi, who's the Food and Agriculture Organization Chief Scientist, and she will be talking to you about sustainable development goals. And again, Ismaël, the floor is yours, and we'll see how it goes.
Good afternoon, colleague. Really a pleasure to be with you today here to talk about, are we on track for the 2030 Global Development Agenda and what's next? We are midway towards, since we signed on the agreement in 2015 on the Global Development Agenda, and this is where we are for the SDGs. So we have in total 140 SDGs, and FAO is a custodian of 24 of them. And what it shows so far, and it's slightly different from what you showed, Magda, for Europe, is that we have only 12% of the SDGs globally that they are on track. Only 12, they are in green. We have about 50% of them that shows progress, but they are either moderately or severely off track. And we have 30% that have no progress at all or have regressed. And that's the case of SDG 2, which is really the main important SDG for FAO as a UN organization. The numbers for 2022 are gonna come up in about a month. But those number here shows the number for 2021. And what it says, we have about 700 to 821 hungry people in the world. If you compare the number of 2021 with 219, and that's really the big worry, we have 150 million more. So we have not progressed. We have regressed and regressed massively. 150 million more that are going bad to hungry just between 2019 and 2021. And the numbers continue to grow, and we're gonna see it in a month or so. The other way to calculate it is what we call prevalence of malnutrition. The prevalence of malnutrition says that we moved in 2019 from 8% to 9.8% in 2021. Another very worrying, really numbers. And that's why at FAO, we are embracing the need to really transform the agri-food system. And we wanna transform those agri-food systems towards more efficiency, more inclusiveness, more resilience, and more sustainability. And if you look at our strategic framework that goes from 22 to 31, it exactly talks about these transformation, and we are painting them under the umbrella of the 4 betters: a better production, a better nutrition, a better environment, and a better life, leaving no one behind. And within that, we are using what we call accelerators. So if you know that this is the path, this is where you wanna be by 2030 and beyond, how could you accelerate impact? The acceleration comes from technology, innovation, data, and complement. And all of these, complement means HR, finance, models, business model, and what have you, all of this requires science, technology, and innovation. And that's where the new position of chief scientist at FAO was created to help really putting in place this transformation and to put it based on evidence. So as a chief scientist, my role, it's really a soft leadership of bringing up the bar, of pushing for more science and technology and innovation, pushing for more evidence, and trying to use it across all programs. So when we did the strategic framework that was approved by the 194 members, what we did underneath it is a strategy for climate change and a strategy for science and innovation. And that shows how these ones, one of them, it's really the challenge of the day that affect agriculture more than anything else, and farmers and producers more than anything else. And the other one, it's really part of the solution. Agri-food systems transformation require innovative approaches. And those innovative approaches, there are many of them out there. But definitely, we need climate-smart agriculture methodologies. We need conservation agriculture. We need regenerative agriculture. We need integrated agriculture systems where you have different components of the systems together. We need agroforestry, agroecology, organic farming, zero tillage. All of these have a dual aims of producing more with less, but also providing ecosystem services. And that's the future. The future has to keep these two in parallel, and it is a triple challenge, as Marion said. It's really difficult to do both of them, but it's very important to use data and recognize that there are synergies and there are trades-off, and whatever we pick up, we have to know that we pick it up, and this is gonna be the consequences. And all of this, particularly in soil management, and I'm very happy that AU is launching a huge initiative around it, the soil carbon sequestration could be multiplied tremendously through innovation. The soil carbon sequestration could help the agriculture sector to become more of a sequester than an emitter of greenhouse gas. The other area where we have really tremendous development, it's the genomics and genetics and omics technologies at large. And I'm very happy that Minister Planas mentioned it. So when we talk about biotechnology or omic technologies, it covers a very wide range of technologies, from very simple breeding methodologies to the gene editing or very advanced technologies. And what is important here to remember is that if we want to leapfrog development, we need to use those technologies. So FAO and my office commissioned the paper on gene editing because we knew it has been given the Nobel Prize for a good reason. It is a disruptive technology that makes your breeding program move from $100 million to $5 million per variety and could eventually help you move from 15 years of breeding a variety to about 5 years. So it is helping us both in terms of cost and in terms of time, and both of them are really scarce nowadays. So the paper on gene editing was very much to showcase what do we know, what we don't know, and how could we use it properly for leapfrogging international development. The other area that is tremendous, and it is the talk of the day, it's the development in digital innovation, be it Internet of Things, be it big data, agriculture automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning. All of these are very important, and what we do at FAO, we embed it in everything. We know that really the phone could be really the source of knowledge of farmers worldwide. Of course, we have problems of connectivity, we have problems of languages and many things, but this tool that the private sector actually took it to all around the world could be used as the vehicle to pass on information. And again, the new era of enormous development in artificial intelligence and automation and machine learning could help us leapfrog. And that's what we need. We need really to focus on that we have 7 years to go. And those 7 years have to catch up with all the delay that we got in the past few years. Here, last year, we published the readiness of scale of digital automation technologies. And this was an attempt to see where should we invest more and which of the technologies are more mature than others. And some of the areas that comes here that are really very much mature for adoption at large scale, it's in, for example, livestock automation, whole farm digitalization, robotics again. It is because of robotics or Internet of Things. And we looked at the same thing in aquaculture, and it is very early stage. So it's very important to look and work with the private sector to understand how far we are from deploying a technology or not. And in this case, many of them are ready to be taken place in livestock particularly. So go into a subject. So if we want to move forward, if we want to leapfrog, how could we do it if we have these numbers in terms of investment in research and innovation? So right now, we know that the public investment in agriculture research and development combined will really enable us to have the right policies or not. So from 1990 to 2014, the private sector has almost tripled their investment in research and innovation in the ag sectors, whereas the public has reduced it, which is a huge concern. But looking at the private sector investment, it is only in few commodities. So it bears the question, should we compete with the private sector or should we back up and do it in the other public areas? So private sector goes for certain commodities that have a large market, whereas the public has always to be remaining in those areas where the private sector is not. So if you look at the investment of public and private spending by income between 1990 and 2014, the data beyond that as well shows that there is a retreat from public agriculture research and development in the rich countries. And also, we have very low level of investment in many poor countries. So you remember the 3% that was declared as the target. Most of the countries in the least and middle income countries are below 1% of GDP. So definitely, if we're talking about finding the solution for tomorrow, we won't be doing it with this kind of investment. And And comparing the public with the private and working the public, the PPP, it's very important. Having that dialogue and having that discussion between the two is very important. So I want to move on to the gender component in the ag sectors. So when we talk about inclusiveness, it's mostly about women and girls, it's mostly about vulnerable population, and it's mostly about youth. So we launched last month, or last 3 months, the status of women in agri-food system that find that 36% of working women are employed in the ag sector, and 38% of working men. So if you want to sum it up, 37% of us are in the ag sectors. That's a huge component, and that should bring the ag food systems right as the highest priority, even more than health, knowing that the ag has a huge component on our health and nutrition. So we looked at, for example, in that report, we look at the connectivity, and we find that good news, finally, in all these numbers, is that between 2017 and 2020, we moved from 44% of women that have access to internet to 60%. So we are moving forward. But in the grand scheme of things, we find that there is very worrying gaps that are persisting in terms of access to land, in terms of access to input, and in terms of access to services. And this has to be reversed very quickly. Same thing with youth. We look at youth, and I like very much the story of Rogers of Simone. It's really, when I think about youth, they are the hope for us for tomorrow. They are the agent of change. They are the future manager of the agri-food system. But they are much more vulnerable than us in terms of climate change, in terms of employability, and in terms of food security and nutrition. So we have 1.2 billion young persons right now. 88% of them are in the least and middle income countries. And those have no hope, have no employment, have no access to finance, and also to knowledge. So if we are talking about really leapfrogging development, we should focus on those 1.2 billion people and provide them with capacity to adopt innovation, capacity to really be part of the rural development agenda. And most of it, it's really access to knowledge. I would like to conclude by saying that, in my view, there are 3 things that I'd like really that this forum agree on with me. The first one is that we need to invest in frontier science, because the science that we know so far did help us to go part of the path, but we need much more. And to get to more, we should really make sure that the public investment remains very high and gets to the 3%, but also that the public and private investment is working hand in hand. The second one is that we need right now to invest in deploying innovation in the Global South. Global South is producing about 10 to 15% of their capacity. By adopting certain technologies, it will allow us really to produce much more in the Global South that will help us to put the SDGs back on track. And the third one, intervention must be intentional and should focus on empowering those that are the underrepresented, be it indigenous people, be it women and girls, or be it youth. And this time, I hope really that we are not leaving anyone behind. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that from here we will come up with clear actions to move forward. And I got 14 seconds still on. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Isman. You people have no idea what wonders those screens are doing to speakers. They get visibly nervous when the red comes up. Now, what we've been trying to think for the next 2 panels is to make sure that all of us are exposed to a bigger number of speakers. So we'll change a bit the format. Isman is already taking one of the chairs. She has a free choice. I will now invite 5 persons to join her, and the 5 persons know who they are. But please, Honorable Penny Wensley, Elizabeth Claverhy de Saint-Martin, Alice Ruveza, Diana Lenzi, and Teresa Pinto Correa. Absolutely, they do deserve. No, Teresa, you keep that from, I keep the ultimate. Okay, I'm not introducing them because first of all, you have the names and functions and where they come from on the screen. And second, if you go to the conference website, you will find the much more detailed biographical note. And in addition, I'm pretty sure that you're familiar with at least 3/4 of the group on stage. Now, what we have thought could work now is that every single person on that stage will be given 3 minutes, and the lights will be blinking for them as well, for what we called impulse statement. They have a bit of freedom as to what they want to say during those 3 minutes, which should ideally relate to the topic of the conference, and even more ideally to the topic of the panel, which is, are we on track for SDGs? What will happen after those 5 times 3 minutes impulse statements, we will start a discussion. And we will open Slido. If you have questions that you would like to ask to the panelists, please put them in Slido. Depending on how badly we stand with the time, I might also be able to open the floor here for questions. If I don't do it now, I will do it definitely for the third panel. And we'll see how we go. But I think this panel, and I have talked to a few of them before, promises a rather lively and maybe surprising set of interventions widely around the topic of SDGs. And Penny, you're first. You're the National Soil Advocate of Australia. Australia is the only country that appointed National Soil Advocate, so we do hope that you will tell us why it works and why it doesn't, and why soil is important for SDGs, or basically whatever it is that you want to tell us. You have a complete freedom, and you have 3 minutes, and the clock is ticking.
It's already 7 seconds.
I'll give you the 7 seconds.
Thank you. Thanks, Magda, and thank you to the EU for inviting me to bring an Australian perspective to this important conference. Ismahan has set the scene admirably for this panel, making it very clear that we are not on track. We are off track to achieve most of the SDGs by 2030. You noted the importance of soil health for achieving particularly the second SDG, and I endorse that obviously wholeheartedly because soil is fundamental for achieving zero hunger. But if you look closely at the SDGs, it shows that paying more attention to soil and soil health will not only help, but is actually integral, is necessary to achieve delivery of 11 of the 17 SDGs. And although this conference is focused on agriculture, soil has to be therefore given higher priority in policy agendas and action strategies across multiple sectors and portfolios, including environment, energy, health, industry, education, science, foreign affairs, trade and development, and in the case of Australia and Canada and some of the other countries, Indigenous affairs. We've increased our attention to soil in Australia quite significantly in the last few years. In 2019, we established a National Soils Advocate as a permanent position. And the position, I am not a government official, I don't speak for government, but the idea is that the advocate raises awareness of the value of soils, of the economic and environmental benefits that soils deliver, and the importance of conserving and improving soil health. To engage with soil stakeholders is really an important part of my job, to identify key issues, concerns and priorities for actions, and provide independent advice to national decision makers for soils policy and programs. So I provide advice to government, but being independent, I can be a bit of a burr in the saddle. I can say things that others can't because I have engaged with the stakeholders and I know their concerns. So I can say, Minister, and I report on a quarterly basis, a personal letter, very candid, to the relevant ministers, and I can say, this is going in the wrong direction, or people don't like this, or there is a deep concern. So I think it's a very valuable position. It is unique. I know others are thinking of it, but I stress it's independent, it's above politics, but even if you're above politics, you actually have to be knowledgeable about, sensitive to, and aware of politics, because you need to be providing advice that is practical and pragmatic. Now, my time is up, and I wanted to tell you a lot more about what Australia is doing with its national soil strategy and wonderful science and research, but maybe that can come up in the panel.
Thank you, Penny. And just for... Can I just suggest we don't stop them with the applause? Not that the others will not deserve the applause, but we'll just save time. But for everybody to know, Penny is staying actually today and tomorrow. She will be joining breakout sessions. So even if the panel, if we don't have the time, all the questions you wanted to ask about Australia, soil and other topics, she will be there. And it's a good thing to pick up your brain on those things. Okay, the next person that I was thinking to ask is Elizabeth. And you're speaking for the French Agriculture Research Center for International Development. Cannot have a better name for an institution to speak for if we are talking about SDGs and whether we are on track. Are we?
Well, first I would like to thank you for inviting me. That's a great honor. And that's a great honor for the CIRAD. So as you presented our institution, I won't go into detail of what we do, but I invite you to go to our website, which is cirad.fr. And I would also like to take part of my time to thank you for the wonderful program on soil you are managing with AgriResearch, which really allows us to work a lot with partners and to have an impact on the ground. So thank you for all this. So, no, as Isman pointed out rightly, we are not at all on track at all. And especially in the countries we are working with, especially tropical countries and Mediterranean countries, which have particular difficulties reconciling agriculture and sustainability. So we try to work on the whole continuum from research, training, ownership, impact, with the private sector on board, and really to change things. So we are doing many things. I would just point out many things. First, I really believe that we could do a lot with agroecology. And agroecology is a diversity of solution. It's not an ideology, it's not a doctrine. You can do ideology with digital agriculture on a very smart issue, and you need right technology. You can do agriculture in very low technology country. It's all context specific and based on what people need and on the farmer willing and on this huge diversity and riches of smallholders all over the world. So that would be a first point. The second point is that we have to listen to nature. Nature-based solutions are a key. For instance, there are a diversity of crop we do not use anymore. They're still there. We have conservation center. And sometimes this is the best solution for hydrical stress, for droughts we are experiencing right now. So we have to use all this. We have to tackle the question of post-harvest losses, and seriously for once. And we have to work on value chains, because this is important. Everywhere in the world, small farmers, they want their share of the money, of the added value. And we won't be able to change anything if we do not take this into account. We have to work on also circular economy. We do it. And I would like to end by 3 small points. We didn't talk about health. Still, we have a lot of One Health issue here and all over the world, and that's very global. And agriculture, because the health of the ecosystem is at stake, is at the heart of it. So we have to think about it. We have to think about the way we have strong data, long-term observatory of what is going on with the climate change, because we need this long-term action to find the right solution. And finally, I will end by recalling that we talk about system. We've been just talking about production, but there are people consuming. when we change the production system, we must think about the way we consume. And what we consume here in Europe has a deep impact on the countries I'm working with in Africa and all the rivers. That's all a system. We are all part of the system. It's not the farmer's business. It's our business. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, always. Okay, that's fine. Okay, but Alice, you're next. You're next on my list of speakers, and can we instead get the list of speakers with their titles on screen instead of what we? I'm saying that to the back of the room, because Alice, you're a member of board of the Consultative Group for International Agriculture Research. And you're also Senior Director for Global Policy Influence and Engagement at the Worldwide Fund for Nature. So you can address the topic of SDGs and whether we are on track from many angles, but also, looking at what research is doing, where should we go, especially if we look at those interconnections between SDGs, because there was a strong point also from Ms. Mann that it's not just one SDG disconnected from others, everything is interconnected. So, Alice.
Indeed, thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you so much for inviting me and for organizing such a wonderful conference. I agree, in fact, I'll start with the SDGs. I agree that we devised the SDGs back in, was that 2015? Yes. I don't remember. Yes. They were meant to be interconnected. They were meant to be indivisible. They were meant to be implemented at the same time. So not achieving one SDG means you lose all of them. And Ismahan has already told us we are not on track. And it's true, we are not on track. And for me, to be able to feed the world and save the planet, we need research and innovation. Right now, we are seeing a terrible disconnect. We heard about it. The world, when we have 700 to 820 people hungry, it's also the time when we are seeing agriculture, research and innovation funding diminishing. And we need to resolve this. Because research and innovation, as everybody has said, is the best way for us to find a way through the challenges facing the planet. And we know that well-targeted research tackles the root causes of hunger, malnutrition, and builds resilience in our food systems, but also reduces biodiversity loss, which is one of the biggest challenges. And it pays off. At the CGIAR, as you talked about, we have measured a 10-to-1 benefits cost ratio on our investment over the past 5 years. And the best part is that these rewards from this research go where they need to go, which is the smallholder farmers, the women, the youth, the indigenous people, who are most vulnerable to the climate impacts, but also the farmers who will continue to expect to produce more as population grows. And research and innovation is powerful, because with that, we can breed climate-resilient wheat and maize, and biofortify sweet potatoes to tackle vitamin A deficiencies. We can use digital technology to warn smallholder farmers of climate threats and give them the tools to defend themselves. We can bring solar irrigation to India, reduce greenhouse gas emissions in livestock, and turn wastewater into a valuable resource. There is nothing that we can't do with research innovation. And of course, we have to talk about soil. I was privileged to attend the launch of the soil deal for Europe. And again, soil is our workhorse. It really is the workhorse. Without its health, we have no sustainable development, as everybody has said. And we need the research and innovation to help us protect our soils from the threats of erosion, from climate change, while simultaneously reducing greenhouse gas emissions. But all of this can only be done with smallholder farmers and the rural communities. They have a better vested interest than anybody else in this, and they need to be resilient. As we said, the resilience is, Roger said, resilience is the new name for efficiency, and we must make sure they are financially incentivized to make sustainable changes by tackling the barriers that they face. We must know the people that we work with. And for this, we need more research and innovation, as we said, thus we stand a better chance for creating a nature-positive, carbon-neutral, and equitable future. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we have Thank you, Alice, because you actually made a perfect transition to the next speaker, because you were talking about the importance of having farmers, especially small farmers, on board. I would also add maybe young farmers, well as not so young farmers. But that brings me to Diana Lenzi, who's the president of the European Council of Young Farmers. So we didn't talk about, but I have this question: how much do young farmers in Europe care about SDGs?
A lot.
Could you elaborate?
I would say that, so I was probably going to be the disruptive one, saying that I don't feel we're off track, because I feel that collectively as farmers, as EU citizens, as global citizens, there's a huge commitment towards sustainability, understanding that there is a call for action. Then of course, transforming the action into your day-to-day action, that's where we have the problem. And I'll take all farmers, because what was being said before, that we have the double challenge of feeding a global population while ensuring, of course, the safety of our planet is a huge one, and we literally can't do that without farmers. And we have a huge generational renewal problem that is global. In Europe, we're looking at only 10%, but that's the same percentage you have in the US, in South Africa. It is a problem everywhere. And if we don't have the people on the fields who are actually going to do the work, who are going to take all of the wonderful results that we can get from research and innovation and put it into their day-to-day activity, if you don't have the final user, then we're trying to solve a problem, but without putting in the problem solver. But I do believe that in this, again, we have one of those points where we have a huge opportunity, that those challenges can actually become the keys to unlock an opportunity, to bring in a new generation of farmers, to bring in more people who want to use more information, more data, more cooperation with research that is tailored to the problems that are local productivity, local products, and use that. But then I'll actually use another word that has been said before, which is money. Research has a cost, innovation has a cost, the products of innovation, equipment has a cost. And the problem for a young farmer, but in general for any farmer, is the investment capacity. We work on a scale, on an economic scale, with what we get, the revenue of what we get for our work is very minimum. And I'm not talking about throwing money at farmers, but I'm saying that if we can look at how farmers can change, how they can invest, and that investment could be aligned to contributing to positive outcomes, that is where we should be supporting the farmer. If the product that comes from that innovation, from that new innovative production system, also contributes to a better environmental output, then it should be rewarded by the consumer. So we have two elements: policymakers and civil society. Because this is a global problem, it's a global call for action where we need the farmers to be put in a central place to actually then be able to do and bring all of that innovation into the fields.
Thank you.
And I am way on time.
2 seconds left.
Wow.
That's perfect, but I think and we probably could have the whole panel discussing that. It's very interesting what you said, I mean, your perception, and I hope everybody else in the room, everybody else's here perception that we are on track. But I think this comes from the privilege that we are in the EU. And there is a difference between, as much as we are not on track with SDGs in the EU, we are still much ahead of the rest of the world, which brings this additional responsibility. And you will hear from especially one person at the end of the conference tomorrow, why what we do is important, but why we are even more responsible for what we are doing, also vis-à-vis the rest of the world. We make a cycle now, go back to soil. Theresia, you're vice chair of the mission board, A Soil Deal for Europe. So soil, SDGs, any other thoughts? You're a geographer as well, so I'm not quite sure which of the angles you will use for your free 3-minute impulse statement.
Okay, thank you very much, Magda, and thank you for inviting me to represent the Soil Mission Board. I'm very happy to be here, and I think soil is really central. And I think what I will try to do is to show that we on the Soil Mission, what we have tried to do is to think what needs to be done so that we bridge better the link between science and practice. Because We need the change. I'm not discussing where we are on track or not on track. We know, and we have evidence that in Europe we have about 60 to 70% of our soils which are degraded or which are not healthy. And we need to make a change, a fundamental change in the way we manage our soils. And these, we had defined targets which are ambitious, but are also realistic on how we can, so feasible changes, which will lead us to something where we have a more balanced use of our soils and therefore are more resilient to climate change, can provide the food, the ecosystem services, and this resilience to climate change we need. So the mission is built on 4 building blocks, and they all have this target of linking science to practice. And there's one on monitoring, because we don't know exactly what is going on with soils all over Europe. We still need to have much more data. We have one on literacy, on increasing literacy, because we need people to know more the importance about soil. Soil is unknown for most European citizens. We have this one on research and innovation, and we have one on living labs, because we need to produce knowledge together with those who are going to use it. And I think this question of the knowledge and the importance of knowledge of innovation, what I really would like to bring to the floor is the question that why do we need research? We need research, more research on soils, because there are still soils we don't need enough about. There are still regenerative mechanisms we don't know enough about. But especially we know too little about the people. People should be in the center. Those who are managing the soil, those who are taking decisions, those who are the farmers, but also others who help farmers in taking decisions. And the farmers have already been in the center here, and Roger has talked about the farmers. We have those who have the sustainability agenda already very centrally in their business, but others who have not. And they do not have access to information or have access not to adequate information. So we need more research on these mechanisms, how to break mechanisms which are not leading to good soils, how to help them in their business models so that they can regenerate their soils and be more resilient for the future. What type of regulation is needed, adapted to each context, that can help the farmer to secure some minimum levels of soil health. So these mechanisms which have to do with social sciences, economy, with the law, with the collective arrangements, these are also object of research. We need to know more about this so that we can really help this transition, which is highly needed. So it's about collective production of knowledge, but about connecting natural sciences, soil science and agronomy with all these other sciences which have to do with behavior and with changing business models. That was my message.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
I would like to draw your attention to the fact that it is a highly disciplined panel. We still have half an hour, and we haven't started a discussion. Until now, they were given a bit of freedom to say whatever they wanted. Now they will be given also more freedom to answer the questions in the way they want. But before I open question, or I start asking questions, and I ask the room and the audience online to ask questions, any thoughts, comments to whatever you have heard from anybody else? If no, Penny?
The thing that struck me is there's a divergence here. We're in a European conference, but this is a panel that has brought an international perspective and a global perspective. There's some differences of view about interconnection between the SDGs and whether we're behind or not. But it seems to me the fundamental thing, and going back to that Slido that we had about what's that one word, knowledge, I think knowledge, yes, but sharing knowledge and collaboration. What I'm hearing is there is a great need to share expertise and knowledge, not just between developed and developing countries, but with all the new science and innovation that is underway. There's some fantastically exciting things out there with digital technologies and a heap of other things. And I know my own country is very involved with these and very keen to share, particularly in our Asia-Pacific region. But the work that you're doing, there is collaboration, it seems to me, and the sharing of information, and our learning from what the EU is doing, or you from Australia, just seems to me a really exciting and important point.
Yeah.
And maybe
Ms.
if I may add, Magda, just to really agree with Penny on sharing knowledge, and that's one of the areas when we were discussing the science and innovation strategy, most ambassadors or ministers from the South, that's what they were asking. They are saying that we don't have enough access, we don't have capacity to do analysis on every technology to see we should invest or not. And they go even beyond that. I feel like when there is a new technologies like AI, or like gene editing, or like nanotechnology, or any of those frontier science, what we are seeing is that those technologies, instead of helping the global South, they are making the gap even larger. And the reason behind it's policy and regulation. Look at gene editing as a technology. It came out about 5-6 years ago. When it came out, few countries said it's yes, few countries said it no. What happened? The countries in the South stopped using it completely. Countries like my home country, Morocco, stopped using it. Countries like Zimbabwe, Tanzania, you name it. Whereas countries that are against it, including in Europe, are using it for research purposes. What happens? 5 years of debate, we agree that the technology is okay. What you're gonna find? You're gonna find the South countries, they are even far behind. And those that were saying it's no, but continue using it because they have the capacity to shield it from the market, they are advanced. So I think really foresight, particularly for science and innovation, is super important. We need today to prepare the policies for technologies that's coming in 10 years. We should not debate it when it's already in the market, but rather before, so that everybody is going from the same point. We can't keep the South always far behind. Otherwise, we're gonna keep in this limbo forever. And really, it is of everybody benefit to agree on technologies, to debate them earlier, and to harmonize policies and regulation around them.
Alice?
Very well said.
Thank you so much. I think to comment on the two views in terms of are we on track or are we not on track. I think the one point I would like to talk about is how we are interconnected. I think it's important to know that whatever happens in the north affects what happens in the south, and what happens in the south affects what's happening in the north. I mean, a very good example is climate change. I mean, the Congo Basin is the second largest carbon sink, just next to the Amazon. If we do not protect the Congo Basin, climate change will be a problem, not just for Africa, but it will be a problem for the rest of the world. And I think really recognizing these interconnections and really working together is also extremely important. And I think in many ways, even if we say whether you're on track or not off track, I think what happens, even the Ukraine war is a perfect example. That was, for me, the revelation was 35 countries in Africa were dependent on wheat from Ukraine, something I would never have known. Yeah, and look at that interconnection. So we are very interconnected. What happens here happens, and I think that the only way out of this is we work together. We collaborate on our research and innovation. Yeah.
Thank you. Any comment? Yes, Teresia.
Yes, I would like to add what has been said because I very strongly believe in this sharing of knowledge and in paying attention. That's one of the objectives of the mission, of the soil mission, is also that we do all the changes we need to do in Europe without damaging further in other parts of the world. So this is part of the responsibility we have. And I think this exchanging across the world are extremely important. But I will make an appeal also that we need to do this, but find solutions which are contextually adapted to each situation. Because even within Europe, we have extremely different situations in terms not only of biophysical conditions for farming, but also of institutional and cultural contexts, which make one solution possible in one place and not possible to achieve in another place. So there's a question of scales, which is my geography soul coming here, which we really need to play with, because it's very good to exchange, but we should not forget that in each farmer is embedded in its local context, and the solution needs to be tailored to this context, not the least in political institutional terms.
It was not mandatory that you all speak, but I'm very happy because you make my job so easy. You just keep talking.
No, because this point is really very important, so I could not insist on it. That depending on the context, things which are believed to be the right solution will turn out not to be the right solution. I just come back from Zimbabwe, and we have a wonderful team working there with the University of Zimbabwe on the impact of climate change. And for instance, TH, which is really a solution widely spread, it happens that depending on the soil, it might be more damaging than what we thought. And we start to have the data. And this is really counterintuitive, but we start to have really good data. And depending on the soil, depending on the climate and things like that, the solution you believe to be the right one or not the right one at one point. And I would just insist on another point, for instance, fertilizer, which are widely used in Europe and too much use, I should say. There is a general view that fertilizers are as bad as pesticides and so on. When you go to Africa, they really need fertilizer. They have virtually no fertilizer. This is my opinion. But they don't need to get into industrial agriculture, which will bring a lot of pesticides with very fragile soil. So you really have to go much more in detail. All this is a very fragile system where we really need partnership and solidarity, because here in Europe we have money to do research, and they do not. So we have to share the knowledge, but also the partnership, so that we found global solution, but rooted really in local context.
Thank you.
I might add at this point,
Yes, absolutely.
just because to round it up, that definitely I thank them for having recognized the need of acknowledging the diversity. And the best way to not onboard the farming community is by not recognizing it, by thinking that there is a one solution that fits all. The best way to onboard the farming community is to use the farmers, to have the farmers be actually the vehicle of that knowledge sharing. So we take the research and the innovation, and we use that to, let's say, pick our first, and use the measurability, the safeness that you can find, and the measurability that comes through science to tell the first farmer, okay, this is what we're suggesting, this is what might work. And once it works there, find something that can be compatible, even very far away, and use that knowledge sharing, so that we're not always reinventing the wheel, but we're understanding that we have many wheels that can work in very different systems, and that using the farmer and that safety that the farmer feels in talking to another farmer who's actually had a positive outcome is what we can really use to like engine everything up.
Okay, thank you. Now, first of all, you might be interested in knowing that AgriResearch just got to the top place on Twitter in Belgium, thanks to you. Keep doing what you're doing in addition to following the conference. Now, we have a few questions already on Slido. They can now get on a screen that we will see it, but not all of you will see it. Please keep putting those questions in Slido, and then we'll see which one we choose. And if there's anybody in the room who feels a pressing need to ask a question to the panel, this is your chance. You need to raise your hand, and then somebody will find a mic to get to you. I don't know who and how, but they told me that will happen. But before that happens, among the Slido questions, which now the panel has seen, there is one which is maybe theoretical, but maybe not. And that's question number 2. This is, sorry, you don't know that it's number 2, but I know it's number 2. It says, what is more urgent, applied research or frontier fundamental research, and why? And look at it in the context of SDGs and knowledge sharing. And this is an AgriResearch conference. So I need volunteers to answer that question.
Yes, Mahan, that's for you.
That's for me. See, for me, it's hand in hand. If you are a scientist, and I'm sure most of us are here scientists, when you start your research program, you start with a hypothesis. As you are going through, you make some decisions and some recommendation and some achievement, but also you go back, you find a lot of gaps. So it's not either or. It's how could we make it a continuum? How could we make sure that that fundamental research idea made it to an applied research, to development research, to really on the ground. So it's not either or, it's a circle that if you interrupt development. That's the way I see it. But if I have $1 billion, I would put much more myself today in the applied research, and I would even go further in development research. I would put much more into how to scale it up in the region that hasn't benefited yet from the development of the last year. I would put that about 50%. I'd put 25% in applied and 25% in fundamental. So that's, it couldn't be more detailed answer than this
You
one.
just let us know when you have this $1 billion.
Can I
Yes,
say something about it? I think the most important thing to help solving the questions we are dealing with is that we address research, which is, the question starts with a question from practice, with a problem from practice. And there's a problem that research can help or contribute to solving. Then we should do the research which is needed for this. Sometimes it's applied, sometimes we will need to go and do some fundamental research because the problem requires this. But if we say that the important research will be the research which replies to a question which comes from practice, I think then the problem, or then it's another perspective to it, where we have both applied but also sometimes fundamental research when it's needed.
Yes, perhaps just managing a research center, I would just, on this question, I think that the most important is what is the mission of the scientist or of the research center? For instance, for my institution, we have a clear mandate on impact, on development. For instance, we are working with INRAE, which is more excellency academics mandate. So the mandate makes it all. And with this mandate, to have an impact, I need both very fundamental research, for instance, on omics to have new varieties, but I also need very applied competences, for instance, engineer and food transformation, so that the new maize we just came out with can be adopted, transformed, and eaten. So I need the whole range, but we need to share where we are heading to. Impact point.
Fanny, I saw your body language. You wanted to comment.
Well, I'm not a scientist, and I'm also a very practical person. And even though I hear what you're saying about the importance of fundamental science, and we do need it, to me, there is a situation of urgency here about practice change, behaviour change, about educating and informing people, and about responding to what farmers want. And for me, that pushes us very squarely into needing to pay more attention to applied research, because that is what is going to be delivering things in the field, on the ground, and addressing the problems. The model that we have is increasingly of cooperative research centres that are bringing scientists and researchers together with the people on the ground and the farming, so that they are part of the solution. I think that the expression was used before, that they're working with farmers, not for farmers, and that they are providing what farmers want. So I come down as a practical, pragmatic person onto the side of we need to pay more attention to applied science at the moment to deal with the emergency situation that we have, and we need a lot more commitment to extension.
I would also add that if you take the science, take it to the farmer, like they say, if you take it to the farmer, your chances of getting to scale are higher, because you'll go there and it will go from farmer to farmer. You create a bigger network, you get to scale.
So the living labs work.
Yeah, you get out of the lab, but you really get into the field and you really scale. Yeah.
I think all of us who can look at the screen, they can't. They only see 3 questions here, but I'm seeing various questions that are coming up, and there's quite a lot of them, and thank you so much for doing that. Nobody's asking for the floor in the room. But there is this one sort of basic, maybe I should have started with it myself, and the question is, which are the top 3 reasons we are currently failing to meet agri-related SDGs? And my add-on to that, where should we focus R&I to deal with that? You want me to point a finger, or somebody will raise their hands?
I could start and then see, but I mean, top 3, of course, we talked earlier about very little funding going to research and innovation. I think that's one big one. Definitely people. We have to talk about the role that humans are playing in this, you know. And So finance, I guess, finance people, and yeah, and I also think just that the scaling, we're not scaling. That we're doing some of the best science in the world, but we're not getting to the last mile. And I think for me, getting to that very last mile is one of the reasons.
Maybe Diana first, and then Isman. We'll change the order.
That's okay. I think we've said it before, but again, it's also a bit the complexity. I think we thought that solving why agriculture was bad for the environment was going to be easy, like that we could point our finger at one sector, at one production system. And instead, we've seen that even when it comes to soil health, and I mean, even in the work we did within CIJA, soil was like our first step to the road to sustainability, because we know it all starts there. The complexity of even trying to improve that, to solve that, to understand the complexity of that system is huge. And then if you have to scale this on a global level where you have so many starting points within even the same region and so many different even farming systems, you have family farms, you have instead larger corporate farms, the complexity of this all really forces us to feel very humble when it comes to thinking of how am I going to solve such a huge issue. And that is why you need to be very practical. You need to be very focused. You need to be, in a way, kind of decide that it's just about fixing that one little thing and then hoping that if we fix all the little things next to it, then finally we'll get to the big puzzle, hopefully. I know this is very French, Voltaire kind of, but it's the complexity, and then in that complexity, because it's so hard to scale, it's the affordability of it. How are we going to finance all of this, and have we really channeled, when it comes even to policy, in the right direction, the funds to actually achieve those objectives? So I'll put two.
Isman, Penny, and then Theresia. So that's the order.
Based on the data, what it says, particularly for SDG 2, the why we didn't get there and we changed our agri-food system to fulfill it, it's inequalities, conflicts, and climate change. So that's what the data says. So the basis for malnutrition is that people cannot afford a healthy diet. So we got 3 billion people that cannot afford it. So how could we make food affordable, healthy food affordable for all? I can give you the example of quinoa, where quinoa became the trendy that everybody is eating, but when it started becoming trendy, the people in the Andes in Peru couldn't afford it anymore. They got a higher malnutrition in the population, higher miscarriage with women, you name it. So inequality, it's really the basis of, we are not getting to SDG 1, SDG 2, and many other SDGs. The conflict, it's number one, again, and this is the data from WFP and from many other FAO and other organizations. We're seeing a spurge of many conflicts around the world that start and never stop. We get used to it. It has been there for 10 years. It has been there for 20 years. And many of these too are related to climate change. So climate change is also one area that did not allow us to produce more with less. It added more more challenge on agriculture sector and on small farmers that are already they are in a risky business, and then climate change added more, and we did not invest in de-risking or in bringing innovation to alleviate their livelihoods. I want to, from here, just tell you, I want to make sure I address this. When we started the carbon market discussion a few years ago, guess what? It went all to energy. Energy people were very ready, more than us, and they started doing zero carbon cars and renewable energy and all the money, all the policies went to it. Tesla became what it is. Why in the agriculture sector we did not do the same thing? Is there a car that sequesters carbon? No. Forest sequester carbon, soil sequester carbon, ocean sequester carbon. So the agriculture sector is a sector that doesn't have enough visibility, nor enough, I don't know, it's an ego or something. We need to speak up, we need to be there. It doesn't make sense that we are paying Tesla for an electrical car, and the poor farmer that is trying to produce cowpea in a place that has no organic material, nothing, doesn't get even enough money for the cowpea that they are producing, he or she. So there is a bit of a dichotomy that we need really to get our policymakers to speak up for us and to give the money back to those that deserve it the most, which are farmers that are both producing food, nutrition, and sequestering carbon. Yeah. And they are hitting us and saying we are producing too much and we need to change everything, but how? So I think really there is those three areas that we know: conflict, inequalities, and climate change, but there is also that the ag sector has to rethink itself and has to present itself as a solution, particularly to climate change. We are already a solution to nutrition, and we know it. Luckily, there is no other way for people to produce food except through agriculture, but we need also to position ourselves for the climate change adaptation and for the carbon sequestration.
I think you opened a topic that we could
spend a whole day on.
And another day. Penny, you are next, and then there was Theresia. And I'm just saying to the room, nobody has asked for the floor. If you don't ask for the floor, you will not be able to ask a question. So think about it. Well, at least to this panel. Penny.
You're a very stern moderator. And, the political realities are there. That, I mean, you described it in that nice little trio of words. But the reality is that governments are dealing with big political challenges, and you said that agriculture just doesn't get the same attention, and from where I sit, neither does soil. It's always been that neglected area, and it is very hard to push the development agenda. I was Australia's ambassador to the UN in New York and in Geneva, and you see it. Things get hijacked by the immediate crisis that needs to be dealt with. And there needs to be a diversion of funding and resources and commitment. And that's not a criticism of the policymakers and the decision makers. They have to deal, if there is a major crisis, and put that first. But there needs to be a consistent, firm, and steady advocacy for the importance of not losing sight and of keeping agriculture, and in my case, soil, before people's consciousness about the importance. And I do agree about the complexity. There is a lot we don't know in terms of addressing all of these SDGs. So we have to keep working away at it, but there needs to be this consistent effort to defend the importance of a development agenda.
Theresia?
Yes, well, the question was very complex in itself, so I'm not, it's too difficult to reply to this question, and some of the reasons or some of the ways have been shown. I just wanted to add to something which was said before, that I think we're not good enough in showing the cost of no action, in having, you know, if we don't recover soils, because because of affordability. Someone was talking about affordability. It's costly for farmers to invest in soil regeneration, to correct soil toxicity, for instance, or to increase organic matter. They are doing the way they have always done, but it's extremely costly for all us, all society, if they don't do it, if we don't help them doing it. And I think we need to have more research, again, in showing what will be the enormous cost of not acting in improving our soils, in this case, or improving, or trying to minimize inequality, or all these issues which are going, it's like we are going in a fast train against the wall, and we continue in this fast train against the wall. And this is extremely shocking, but I think we are not good enough in showing what will happen if we do not change. Because often we have this argument, it's too costly to change, but it's much more costly not to change, and we need to show this. So it's also about showing evidence. The agriculture sector is not good enough in showing the evidence, and there's a question of affordability, but probably we need to stick together to be better in showing this, so that there will be more investment from society, from the public, to really make something to change.
Okay, looking at the room, I know they are worried to ask. There's somebody?
Somebody raised their hand.
Whoever is there, and if the person has a mic, you should be getting a mic. The mic is coming. I will traditionally ask you to introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Sven Arts. I'm a cognitive scientist. I'm from the EU Federation of Medical Spas, the 1,400 medical spas in Europe. we are mostly located in agricultural areas and so forth, where we have strange phenomenal geological situations where you have hot oil bubbling up, hot water, hot mud fumes, and so forth. We have now recently transformed from 27 EU health monopolies in every EU union, thanks to Ms. von der Leyen, who removed all these panels separating these 27 health union monopolies. Do you, in the agricultural field, have the impression that you are living in an EU agro union, or do you have the feeling that you also are still living in a European patchwork of 27 monopolies in agriculture? Two examples, for example. We have, for example, research in revalorizing. I'm also in the EU bioeconomy, circular bioeconomy. We revalorize agricultural waste. We make bioethanol, for example, and biogas. And then we want to drive to the cities to deliver our products, to be faced by the DG of Mobility and Transport that has erected some kind of medieval paywalls, and all of a sudden there is low emission zones or zero emission zones, and we cannot even enter with our biomethanol and B-fuel cars anymore. What the heck?
I hate interrupting you. I hardly ever do it, but I'm not necessarily sure that the panel is best placed to talk about low emission zones in cities. I had spent before several years in transport, so maybe at some free moment of a cocktail, I'm happy to deal with your questions. But you did ask a question to what extent agriculture policies in the EU are common or not. I'm a moderator, so I'm in a perfect position not to answer the question, but I think we are pretty good at common policies in the EU. But for me, a more interesting question stemming from what you just asked is how united we are at the global level when it comes to defending agriculture. Because one thing that I heard from, I think, all of you on the panel is that agriculture people and agriculture sector doesn't speak strongly enough to explain why we matter. So is there a one voice of agriculture, or is the voice of agriculture divided by borders between global south and north? Is it EU and the rest of the world? Is it Australia, US, China, EU and the rest of the world? Or is agriculture speaking together? And that will be my closing question to you. So after answering that, you will be relieved.
I'll say one thing. I do not know much about the EU policy, but I think what we had today is related to the whole SDG discussion, which is that we need to break down the silos. I think that agriculture is working in a silo. It is not, if it's not connected to all the other, and Ismahan made very strong points how SDG 1 is connected to SDG 2, probably 3, 4 until 17, they're all connected. But right now we're not working that way. And I think that as long as we continue working that way, whoever shouts the loudest will get the, and that's not agriculture. Over to you.
Penny, in Australia and outside Australia with your experience globally, is agriculture united or is it a silo? Are the silos within?
No, it's not a silo, but obviously it's not united because the circumstances of each country is enormously different. I mean, in our case, we produce 3 times more food than we need for our population. So we're the world's 12th largest food exporter. We're very good at it. And we share our knowledge and information with a lot of countries and peoples in our region. And I think that we have very effective dialogues. For example, Australia was the world leader in conservation agriculture, and we introduced that to China, our scientists and experts. We do a tremendous amount of work in the Philippines, which incidentally is developing its own national soil strategy and is about to have its first World National Soil Health Forum. And we're certainly finding, working with countries in the region, there is an enthusiasm and an appetite for doing better with agriculture. So I don't think people are siloed, but I do think that I come back to my point that we need to work more effectively to share information, to collaborate and build on those successes. I'm more optimistic. I think that research and innovation will help us get to the SDGs, but I need to have the last word for myself on soil, not unless we pay more attention to soil and soil health and soil sustainability and soil security, and we give it higher priority.
And you know that this is music to my ears, so I'm very happy that's your closing word. Isman, I'll give you the floor at the end, if you allow. So I will. My question is: agriculture a silo? Do we do enough to talk across the silos? Just to everybody in the panel. Dan, you're next.
So I've had the great opportunity of participating in a global forum of farmers. I just came back from South Africa, and it gave me the opportunity to bring the voice of the young farmers of the EU, but also to be in the position of listening. And when you listen, when you start understanding that there are common challenges, there are common problems, there are possibly also solutions, that from that sharing, listening, talking, being around the table, and you start seeing the voice kind of form. But it is true, we've still not become good enough at speaking up for ourselves. We've still not found enough space. It's getting better. I think probably the last 2-3 very disruptive years have shown us the importance of farming and the importance of food security and the importance of sustainability and how farmers are part of that. So I think farmers in the next years will get more space to bring out that voice, but it's there. It's kind of bubbling underneath. It just needs to have the opportunity to emerge and to show that we want to be part of the solution, absolutely. But to be part of the solution, again, we need farmers. We need that extra set of hands. And sometimes, again, we're in a moment of urgency, but some of the solutions take time. And so if we have an aging farmer population, it's very hard to convince someone who's going to retire in the next years to go into a transition that's going to take 7 years to give productivity. So that is why we need to attract people who are starting their careers, who are looking at their future, who are thinking, oh, this is what I want to do. I want to make food for the world and feel proud of it. So
Well said.
that will come.
Yeah, I think seen also from the soil mission or from the soil perspective, I think surely we have some silos, and from research, but also in administration and in managing these sectors, we surely need more integration experts. I mean, we are somehow continuing on doing something, advancing in knowledge in specialities, and we need to invest much more in educating and in supporting people, which will be these integration experts across sectors. But besides this, what I would like also to say is I think the divide is not, we have a lot of integration already ongoing. We have a lot of communication. It's bubbling, as you see it, also the relation between farming and resources and natural resources, the environment and social questions. I think that the separation, which is, there's still a way to go, is between different farm systems, different farming systems, different types of farming. Like we have the very large ones, very entrepreneurial, global placed, and then we have a myriad of other types of farming, of also agroforestry, for instance, which is considered, but it's still not really on its way as a new type of farming. And I think that the main question will be, well, there's a question about connecting more across different countries and different regions, but also to recognize all these types of farming which are needed. They are all needed because they respond to different types of demand in terms of the context they are, in terms of the resources they have available. So I would say that the bridging we need to do, it's more across different farm systems than across different countries, I would say.
Elizabeth, then Isman, and then we round up.
Okay, just 2 points. I come back on the European issue because this is an important one. Which image can we give outside? Because as CIRAD, we work in 60 countries, mainly in Global South. I would just like to say that what I experienced personally is that we are really seen as a Team Europe. And this is really quite clear when it's not a French institution because on the ground we work with European project and we're with European delegation. But what is also clear is that as agriculture power, there is so much expectation, so many expectations on our shoulders, and this is quite hard. I mean, of course, we are supposed to have the best science, to have the solution to, we are a very productive region, and so there are very high expectations, and this should not be underestimated. Versus the question of silos, I do believe when it comes to research that we still suffer from silos. For instance, there was a question about forest. So in CIRAD, we have forest as a unit, a big unit, and we work both, we work on tropical forests, Congo and so on, but forest not only as a production, forest, we work on it as a biodiversity reservoir. So this is not a common approach when you work on agriculture. You have to have it into your tools box. Also, we have more and more people working on health, because we could see the issue. So, and also on food transformation, because it's not only what you do, and after the product and the safety and what you can innovate in this food transformation to be more efficient. So, in fact, you always have to have some people which are going to go to cross the frontier, to catch what is going on in other fields, to bring it back, and then to find to help having innovation. So I won't be so positive. We can do much better. But it's the system by itself always brings you to your own field of work. That's natural.
Man, closing words go to you, at least for this part.
Yeah, so Magda, I think we are in a better place than before. So we see convergence now between the ag sector, the health sector, the nutrition, the environment. So we are seeing a better conversion. I see it very much like the UN system. So we had the nutrition conference a few years ago where it was mostly agriculture and health. We had the conference on water just recently that had the ag and the other non-ag sectors. So I think there is a convergence. You go to COP28, I think the first time we had agri-food systems with 10 pavilion was in Sharm el-Sheikh in COP28. In Glasgow, when we had COP27, they did the breakthrough report, and out of the 5 subjects that they pick up agriculture, it was there along energy and transportation and what. So there is a better recognition of the importance of the agricultural food system, but when we talk about climate change, we are the corporate, and we should not be. So that's what the narrative, the attention, it's there. I think we got the attention of policymakers at the global level, at the regional level, at the local. Now, how could we use science and technology to change from being the corporate to be the saver? Because anyhow, I mean, if people are willing to pay $1,000 for a phone, why don't they pay as much money for food? Come on, I mean, it's really, it has to become a percentage of your income. You pay so much for housing, but in food, you want to have the lowest price. So there is a bit, and that price, by the way, when you look at the farmers versus the agri-food system, the one that gain most money is the supermarket. So and that's where things are changing with AI. Things are changing with digital. Soon there may be no retailers. Maybe it will be everything online. So you're going to reduce the value chain. So that's where science has to be ahead of the curve and give us those solutions to make the farmers most as the hero of tomorrow. So you're going to be a hero, Diana, and also to get them more income. So how could we do it? And that's where we need quick fix and thinking out of the box. But I think we are getting there. It's better than ever.
Thank you so much, because this is actually a perfect transition to the panel that will come after the break. But before we get there, first, big thanks to all of you. You stay on stage for my closing remarks, and the first closing remarks, you actually had already a preview. Sven, you've been doing a great job, and I've seen what you have there. Can we get it on the big screen, please? There you go. So that's the Enabling Sustainable Transition in Agriculture, Forestry and Rural Areas. That's the first panel, and then we have the second panel also there. You will have chances to see it. So that's a summary of the discussion now with all the things that Sven picked up and put on the picture. Let's keep the picture in the background. Everybody will be looking and thinking whether this is exactly what we've been discussing, or maybe we discussed something else. Now, good news for you, there will be a half-an-hour coffee break, even though we are 15 minutes late. So you are kindly welcome to come back to this room at 16:45. That's one thing. Second, when you go out, you will see quite a huge collection of posters, because we also have a poster session during coffee breaks and later and for tomorrow to tell you more about the projects that we do that are already happening on the ground. So grab your cup of coffee and have a look at the posters again today or tomorrow. What we will also have, we will have a special stand of EIP Agri where you can get more information on the CAP network activities, which again, for us is a good opportunity to reach out to those of you who are normally not necessarily that much in touch with CAP network. There will be, you do know that on Friday there will be study visits. I don't think we have any free places, but you may go and talk to the stand. If anybody gave up their place, you can still sign up. And do trust me, those study visits are really worth going to. So nag them on that stand. If they have any slots, they will be happy to take you along. And just last but not least, during break in here we'll be playing 15 or 16 videos promoting different projects. Those videos will also be visible to those who are watching us online, because now they cannot join us for the coffee, but they can join us for the videos. And I think I'm looking at my team. Anything else I was supposed to say now? No, they say I'm good to go. Thank you so much for those 2 exhausting sessions. Big thanks to all the panelists and speakers. Enjoy coffee. See you in half an hour. Ladies, and you have seen that